A crossed-off task feels strangely powerful because your brain treats that tiny line like proof you are back in control. Picture someone at a kitchen table with coffee gone cold, a half-finished list, and one small chore finally done after an hour of circling around it. The list itself looks almost too ordinary to matter, with reply to email, wash cup, and pay bill sitting there like tiny pebbles on a very long road. Then, pen touches paper. Tiny scratch. Quiet relief. It is such a small scene, and honestly, that is what makes it interesting. Nothing huge has changed. No life problem has politely packed a suitcase and left. No calendar has become magically empty. But one line appears across one task, and somehow room feels slightly lighter. Weird, right? We know this feeling well enough that we sometimes game system a little. You finish showering, then write shower on list, then cross it off like you have outsmarted civilization itself. It is funny because it is true, and it is true because mind wants visible proof that effort happened. Proof matters. That little mark gives shape to something that was invisible a second ago. Before line, you had intention, memory, maybe guilt, maybe that faint buzzing sense of, I should be doing something. After line, you have evidence. Finished evidence. And look, this is not about worshipping productivity or becoming some shiny task machine with color-coded pens and no inner life. There is nothing wrong with color-coded pens. By way, they have done more emotional labor than some people we know. But satisfaction of crossing something off reaches deeper than productivity culture. It reaches into feedback, attention, memory, motivation, and brain's old love of closed loops. Because much of daily life is annoyingly unfinished. Laundry becomes clean laundry, then folded laundry, then laundry that somehow returns as more laundry, like soft fabric boomerang. Email answers one question and creates 3 new ones, because apparently inboxes reproduce in dark. Life keeps opening tabs. A to-do list gives those open tabs small names. It says, this is not my entire chaotic existence. This is buy toothpaste. It shrinks fog into items you can see. That helps. Then crossing something off gives mind a tiny ending. Humans like endings because endings let attention release its grip, almost like unclenching hand you did not notice was tight. Your brain does not only want reward at finish line of giant goals, it also wants little signals along way that say, yes, movement happened. That signal feels good. There is also physical theater of it. Pen presses down, paper pushes back, line drags across words, and scratch sound gives task a miniature funeral. You can see old obligation being marked as done. Small drama. Good drama. A checkmark works too, of course, especially neat little one in box. Tapping complete in an app can feel nice, with tiny animation or soft vibration saying, good job, citizen of Listland. But crossing out has extra attitude. It does not whisper completion, it scratches through unfinished business with mild vengeance. Maybe that is why such a tiny action can change mood of a messy day. Desk may still be cluttered, sink may still hold mysterious fork, and brain may still remember 12 things you forgot to write down. But one item is no longer floating around demanding attention. It has landed. When day feels slippery, list becomes grip. When day feels too full, list becomes edge. When day feels vague, list becomes shape. Shape can feel like comfort. I find this fascinating because comfort here is not grand or dramatic. It is not, everything is fine now, because everything is almost never fully fine by Tuesday afternoon. It is more like, one piece is handled. And sometimes one handled piece is enough to make next piece possible. That is hidden power of crossed-off task. It does not solve whole puzzle, but it tells brain puzzle has parts. Once something has parts, you can touch one part, move one part, finish one part. Mess becomes more navigable. There is a tender little truth inside that. Many people make lists when they feel behind, scattered, or quietly overwhelmed, even if they would never describe it that seriously. They make list because mind is trying to place worries somewhere outside itself. Paper can hold weight. Then crossed-off item says, effort counted. Not perfect effort, not heroic effort, not some cinematic transformation with sunrise and inspirational music, just effort, counted. That is why adding already finished tasks is not only ridiculous. Okay, it is a little ridiculous, but it is also mind asking for record. If you have already carried load, you want some sign that load existed. And honestly, we do this in other places too. We save receipts, take progress photos, track steps, keep streaks, underline sentences, and watch loading bars crawl toward completion because visible progress calms something in us. Brain likes knowing where it is in story, beginning, middle, end. A crossed-off task gives ordinary day a tiny ending, and tiny endings matter more than we admit. They create rhythm in a life that can otherwise feel like one long, unfinished sentence. They say, this part is closed, next part can begin. So that little line is not silly. It is simple human feedback, drawn in ink, pixels, or pencil dust. Beneath that quick spark of satisfaction, brain is rewarding something very specific. Now we can look under surface and ask what reward is really for. Reward, here, is not fireworks. It is a small confirmation light in the mind. You made an effort, the world changed a little, and proof sits in front of you. Before the mark appears, the task is only intention, weight without shape. It follows you around and keeps the day slightly unfinished. After you cross it off, the task has edges. Before, action, after. The line says, your effort landed somewhere. That feels clean. Dopamine belongs in this story, but carefully. It is not simple happiness syrup. It is more like a motivation and learning signal. One way the brain notices what led to progress, what was worth the effort, and what might be worth doing again. When you finish a task and mark it complete, feedback arrives fast. Effort happened, result appeared, loop closed. The brain likes that clear sequence in a day full of vague pressure, open tabs, and half-finished thoughts. A crossed-off item teaches, this action led somewhere. Next time, starting may feel slightly less heavy. Small examples show this better than grand ones. Clear one message from your inbox, not the whole inbox, just one reply, no longer staring from the screen. You type the answer, hit send, maybe archive the thread, and the mind gets a clean click, like a light turning green. Fold one shirt. Nothing heroic happens, yet a messy shape becomes a neat rectangle. The pile shrinks by one, and your hands can see what your intention did. Finish one paragraph in a project that still feels enormous. You reach the period, save the file, and the work stops being fog for a second. Book one appointment that took 5 minutes but occupied your head for 5 days. You choose a time, get confirmation, cross it off, and again the mind reads the signal. Done counts. This is why satisfaction does not require an impressive task. The brain often responds less to social importance than to closed loops. Nobody uploads buy toothpaste. Still, when you write it down, do it, and cross it off, it can feel weirdly victorious. The victory is not greatness, it is certainty. Something was open, now it is closed. Something had to be remembered, now it does not. One small demand has left the room. The outside world may not care, but your nervous system notices one less thing to hold. I find this fascinating because the mark itself is almost childish. A check, a line, a tap on a screen, any child could understand it in 1 second. Yet the mechanism underneath is sophisticated. The mark is not decorating a planner. It is making progress visible. And visible progress is rare in adult life. Health changes slowly. Relationships improve through conversations with no completion badges. Learning a skill can feel invisible for weeks. Saving money can feel like watching grass think about growing. Many important things ask for patience before they give evidence. Life hides progress. A to-do list makes progress visible on demand. You do one thing, mark one thing, and the distance between effort and evidence becomes short. That distance matters because motivation weakens when feedback is delayed. If you work for months toward a result you cannot see yet, your brain has to run on trust. Trust is noble, but tiring. Feedback gives fuel. Crossing something off gives a quick lesson. This behavior led somewhere. It does not transform your personality or solve every reason work feels hard. It nudges. If one task leads to a clean finish, the next task may look less hostile. The doorway gets wider. This also explains why people sometimes write down a task they already completed, then cross it off immediately. It sounds like cheating, and maybe a tiny bit it is, but it reveals the real hunger underneath the list. We want proof. We are not only asking, "What should I do next?" We are also asking, "Can I see that I have done anything at all?" In a busy mind, that question can become emotional. The crossed-off line answers without a speech. Yes, something moved because you moved it. Seen this way, a to-do list works best as a gentle feedback tool, not a moral scoreboard. It should not shame you for being unfinished. Everyone is unfinished. It can show effort, give shape to progress, and hand the brain one clear green light at a time. Choose one small task today. Send the message, fold the shirt, finish the paragraph, book the appointment, buy the toothpaste. Let the mark be small, even silly. Then notice what changes when your brain receives proof that effort worked, and how that proof quiets noise you no longer need to carry. That quieting is the part we often underestimate. An unfinished task does not always shout. Often it hums in the background, asking for small pieces of attention while you are doing something else. It may be an email you meant to answer, a bill you need to check, a message still waiting, or that odd errand that has lived in your head for 3 days. None of it may be urgent, but it still takes up room, because the brain does not treat vague memory like safe storage. Vague memory drops things. So the mind keeps checking. The weight of a to-do list is not only the work itself, it is also the monitoring, the quiet internal job of remembering that something still needs future you to return and handle it. That job costs energy. A useful picture is a screen full of browser tabs. Some are important, some are random, some opened because you were searching for one thing and somehow ended up comparing desk lamps at midnight. But each tab still claims a little space. The mind does something similar. Open loops sit there, half-loaded. They do not need full attention every second, thankfully, or grocery lists would destroy civilization, but they stay available enough to interrupt. You remember them while brushing your teeth. You feel them when trying to rest. They become small background negotiations. Not now. Later. Do not forget. Psychologists often connect this to the Zeigarnik effect, named after Bluma Zeigarnik, who studied how unfinished tasks can remain more mentally active than finished ones. Real life is messier than one experiment, so it should not be turned into a magic law. Still, the simple idea is useful. Unfinished things tend to keep calling back, while completed things can settle. That settling is the relief. When you cross off a task, you are not only saying, "I did that," you are also telling your brain, "You can stop holding this now." The line gives attention permission to leave. This is why a list can feel strangely heavy when every item is still open. Even ordinary tasks can turn into a little crowd of demands, all facing you at once, all waiting for an answer. Then one line gets crossed off, and the pattern changes. The page may still be full, but now it contains proof that movement is possible, that the wall has a door, that one small thing no longer has to be carried. That mark says more than it seems to say. A to-do list is not a judgment, it is a map. On a confident day, the map looks practical. On a tired day, it can look like evidence that you are already behind. Crossing something off gives the map a route. If you find this useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Then the psychology comes back into focus. Crossing off a task creates closure, and closure feels good because attention is limited. You only have so much mental brightness to spread across a day, and every unresolved loop steals a small bit of it, even when the theft is quiet. Writing a task down reduces one kind of load. It moves the task out of loose memory and into a visible place. Crossing it off reduces another. It tells the mind the loop is closed. The brain no longer has to keep asking, when? The answer is now, done. This is often clearest with tasks that are annoying rather than hard. Reply to the dentist. Cancel the subscription. Put the form in the envelope. Each one may take 5 minutes, yet each can occupy mental space for days because it is unfinished, awkward, and easy to postpone. Once it is crossed off, the emotional math changes. The task stops being a floating reminder tapping the glass. It becomes a closed case, a small file the mind can stop reopening. The relief can feel bigger than the task deserves, but that mismatch reveals something true. Daily stress often comes not only from doing things, but from carrying invisible reminders of things not yet done. The crossed-off line does not erase all responsibility, and it does not make life tidy. It only creates a clean boundary around one finished thing. Before the mark, the task is still open, still slightly alive, still asking for attention. After the mark, it has a quieter shape. It stops buzzing. That is why one completed item can make the next item feel less hostile. The nervous system receives a small signal. Effort can lead to closure, not endless chasing. Momentum begins as relief. That may be the hidden charm of the to-do list. It lets the mind see that life is not one giant cloud of unfinished everything. It is a series of small loops that can be opened, handled, and closed. The list stops being a swarm of reminders and becomes a sequence of handled moments. Now that the mind feels lighter, look at why the hand, the eye, and the physical mark make the feeling stronger. Now the hand, the eye, and the mark begin doing work the mind cannot do alone. Thinking about a task can be useful, of course, but it stays strangely slippery, like holding water in your palm and pretending you have stored it. You remember it, then half remember it, then wonder if you already did it. Annoying little fog. On paper, or even inside a task app, that same task becomes something with edges. It has a place, a line, a box, a tiny piece of screen or page where it lives until you deal with it. Once you cross it off, your brain does not have to trust memory alone. It can look. That matters. Psychologists sometimes call this embodied cognition, which sounds fancy, but the idea is friendly. The body helps the mind understand what happened. Your hand moves. Your eyes track the mark. Your fingers feel the pen or the phone glass. And completion gets a physical signature. Completion is not only something you know, it is something you can sense. That is why a simple line can feel weirdly rich. The drag of ink through letters has weight, even if the task was small, like sending one email or taking out the trash. The clean tap of a checkbox has a little snap to it, and some apps even reward you with a tiny animation, like digital confetti for surviving Tuesday. I find this fascinating. If you find this useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment, because once you notice this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. We are not only chasing productivity when we cross something off, we are asking for proof. We want the world to answer back, even in a tiny way, and say, yes, effort happened here. A mental plan can be smart, but it often leaves no trace. You can spend 20 minutes deciding what to do next and still feel like you are floating, because nothing outside you has changed yet. But write the task down, finish it, and cut a bold line through the sentence, and suddenly there is evidence. I think the appeal is that crossing off a task turns invisible self-discipline into visible evidence. You can point to it and say, there, that happened. Handwritten lists can make this feeling even stronger for some people. They slow you down just enough to make each task feel chosen, not tossed into a machine. Your handwriting carries your mood, your hurry, your pressure, your little corrections, and by the end of the day, the page holds a visible accumulation of effort. I like that. It feels human. Digital tools can work too, and for many people, they work beautifully. A phone list is fast, searchable, synced, and always nearby, which is no small thing when your brain is already juggling 6 tabs of life. But paper has texture and finality that the brain may enjoy. A crossed-out line on paper does not disappear into an archive with one swipe. It stays there, sitting in plain sight, like a small fossil of discipline. This is also why rewriting a list can feel different from scrolling through one. When you rewrite, you handle each task again, and your brain gets another chance to decide what still matters. When you cross something off by hand, the gesture is slow enough for satisfaction to land. The moment has friction. Sometimes friction helps. And look, none of this means paper is morally superior, or that a perfect notebook will rescue your life. That would be a very expensive way to learn you still have laundry. The point is smaller and more interesting. We feel progress more deeply when progress becomes visible, touchable, and finished by some kind of gesture. So the crossed-off task is not only a record, it is feedback. It tells the mind, the body, and the eye the same story at the same time. You moved something from open to closed. Small task, real closure. But satisfaction can become tricky when we start chasing easy check marks instead of meaningful progress. And this is where the tiny joy gets a little slippery, because once crossing things off starts to feel good, we may begin choosing work that gives us the fastest finish line. Look, this is not a character flaw, and it is not some secret proof that you are lazy or unserious. It is reward chasing. Honestly, the brain loves a clear little win, especially when the alternative is a task with fog around it, feelings inside it, and no obvious place to begin. So if you have one difficult proposal waiting for you, and 5 low-priority messages sitting there like tiny arcade buttons, the messages start to look strangely noble. Ping, ping, ping. Done. You were supposed to start the proposal, but now the inbox is cleaner, your hand has crossed off 5 things, and part of your mind is giving itself a small parade. Okay, maybe not a full parade, maybe one tired man with a trumpet, but still, the reward is real. That is the trap. The same thing happens when you clean the desk instead of making the call, or reorganize the list instead of doing the thing on the list. And look, reorganizing a list can feel so productive that it almost deserves its own warning label, because suddenly the colors are better, the categories make sense, and the difficult task is still sitting there untouched, watching you become a stationery expert. I find this painfully familiar. The reason easy wins pull so hard is that they offer quick certainty. You know when the message is answered. You know when the mug is moved. You know when the file name is fixed. And the brain can close the loop without much emotional cost. Clean ending, fast reward. Bigger tasks do not behave that politely, because they often ask us to tolerate uncertainty before they give us any satisfaction. A proposal may require thinking, deciding, risking judgment, and sitting with the uncomfortable feeling that the first draft will probably be bad. No wonder the brain looks for a smaller door. So the list, which began as a tool for focus, can quietly become a machine for avoidance if every checkmark is treated as equal. One checkmark might represent sending a life-changing application, and another might represent deleting an expired coupon email, but on paper, they can look oddly similar. Same little line, very different life. This is why I think the question is not, how do I stop enjoying easy wins? Because that joy is useful, and honestly, we do not need to turn productivity into a cold little punishment ritual. The better question is, what kind of movement do I want the checkmark to reward? That question changes everything. If the reward goes only to completion, we may keep choosing tasks that complete quickly, but if the reward goes to meaningful movement, then a checkmark can support the harder work instead of stealing attention from it. That is the better game. A useful way to protect the pleasure is to name one meaningful task before the day starts getting noisy. Not 10, not the whole heroic life plan, just one task that would make the day feel honest if it moved forward. Okay, one is plenty. Then shrink that task until it has a next action small enough for your brain to approach without flinching. Work on proposal is foggy, but open the document and write 3 rough bullet points for the opening section gives the mind a handle. The checkmark has somewhere to land. This matters because big tasks often fail at the doorway, not in the middle. We do not avoid them only because they are long. We avoid them because the first step feels vague, loaded, or too connected to identity. So, make the first step almost boring. There is something kind about this, I think, because it stops treating motivation as a moral test. Instead of asking yourself to become a different person, you give your current brain a clearer path to the work that matters. That feels more human, and we need that kindness, because lists can become little scoreboards if we are not careful. An unchecked item can start to feel like evidence, as if the list is whispering, "See, you failed again," when really, it may only mean the day changed, the task was too big, or you are a person with limited energy and a body. The list should help attention, not punish humanity. So when something stays uncrossed, it helps to get curious before getting harsh. Is the task unclear, too large, emotionally uncomfortable, or just not important anymore? That small pause can turn the list back into a guide. The goal is not to kill the pleasure of crossing things off. The goal is to aim that pleasure toward the work you actually care about, so the brain still gets its little spark, but the spark lights the right room. Small win, better direction. Once that balance is in place, the check mark becomes less like candy and more like a compass. You still get the satisfaction, but now it points somewhere useful. And with that, we can use this tiny psychological reward on purpose. Not to trick ourselves into becoming machines, because that sounds exhausting and mildly rude, but to give the brain clearer signals about what matters next. A good list does not need to impress anyone. It needs to be believable. So, start smaller than your anxious brain wants. Your anxious brain loves to write a list like it is planning a rescue mission, a career change, a kitchen renovation, and emotional enlightenment before lunch. I find that both ambitious and completely unhelpful. Write fewer things. Choose one visible next step, not the whole mountain. Instead of fix life, write open the document. Instead of get healthy, write put shoes by the door. Instead of deal with that person, write send one message that says, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Huge vague tasks are where motivation goes to nap. That smallness is not laziness, it is psychology. The brain has a much easier time moving towards something it can picture, and be better is not a picture, it is a fog machine with judgment issues. Open the email draft is a door handle. You can touch it. Then, make the finish unmistakable. Do not let completion hide in some fuzzy middle place where your brain has to hold a meeting to decide whether it counts. If the task is wash mug, done means the mug is clean. If the task is book appointment, done means appointment is booked. If the task is think about budget for 10 minutes, done means the timer ended and you stayed with it. That last one matters. Some tasks are not dramatic from the outside, but they take real effort from the inside. Thinking, waiting, choosing, calming yourself down, not opening the app for the 9th time, caring for someone, answering one difficult message. These are not nothing. They are work with no confetti. This is where a done list can quietly change the whole feeling of a day. At the end of the day, write down what you already completed, especially the things your to-do list never knew how to capture. Answered 2 texts. Made lunch. Sat with a decision. Did not spiral for as long as usual. Tiny, maybe. Still real. A done list gives credit back to the parts of effort that disappear. Regular lists are good at tracking objects, emails, errands, and neat little boxes. They are worse at tracking restraint, patience, emotional labor, and the invisible admin of being a person. Your brain needs evidence there too. Because the satisfaction of crossing something off is not only about productivity. It is reward, closure, attention, and physical proof meeting in one small mark. The line says, "Effort became reality." That is why it can feel strangely emotional. The task may be ordinary. The mark may be tiny. But the brain reads it as a completed loop, and completed loops are calming in a world that keeps leaving tabs open. No wonder a crossed-off item can feel like a deep breath. Of course, the list will never hold your whole life. It should not. A person is not a stack of finished tasks wearing shoes and pretending to be fine. Still, a thoughtful list can help you see where your energy went, where your attention got pulled, and where the next small step might be waiting. So tomorrow, or later today, try one experiment. Pick one task small enough that it almost feels too easy. Put one glass in the sink. Open one file. Place one book back on the shelf. Send one sentence. Let the finish be visible. And when it is done, cross it off slowly. Notice the tiny pleasure without mocking it. Let your brain receive the message, not as proof that you are finally worthy, but as proof that one small thing moved from intention into the world. That is enough for one line. The to-do list is not a moral scoreboard. It is a gentle feedback tool. Imperfect, ordinary, and quietly reassuring, sitting there with one little mark that says, "Today, something got finished."